Someone tied a puppy to a tree and left a note. That note still haunts me. He was trembling, just sitting there, pressed tight against the trunk like he was trying to disappear. Thick rope wrapped around his small black and tan body, pulled so tight I could see the skin folding beneath it. His little chest barely moved. His front leg was twisted under the pressure, as if he'd stopped trying to find a comfortable position hours ago. The paper flapped above him, a crumpled sheet of notebook paper taped to the tree with clear packing tape. I saw a few words written in black marker, but I couldn't read them yet. My focus was on him. "Hey, baby," I whispered, stepping closer. "It's okay. I see you." His eyes flicked up to mine. That's when I noticed how swollen the fur looked under the rope. I dropped to my knees and reached for the knot, but it was pulled like it had been yanked with all the strength someone had. It wasn't just around his neck. It went under his belly, around his legs, like someone wanted to make sure he couldn't move even an inch. I tugged. Nothing. Tried again. My fingers slipped. I didn't have anything sharp on me. No keys, no scissors, no knife. Just my hands and a rising panic that made my chest tight. "Come on. Come on," I mumbled, yanking harder. But all I managed was to make him whimper. I pulled back instantly, hands shaking. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry, baby." That's when I felt it. The anger, hot and sudden. Who does this? Who looks at a puppy and thinks, tie him up and leave? I stood up, yanked my phone from my purse, and called animal rescue. My voice cracked when I gave the location. As I waited, I sat down in the grass next to him. Not too close, just enough to let him know I wasn't leaving. That's when a jogger slowed down on the path. A tall guy in his 20s, earbuds in, sweat dripping off his forehead. He stopped, stared for a moment, and pulled out his phone. I thought maybe he was going to help, but all he did was take a picture. "Poor thing," he said flatly, then kept walking. I watched him go, mouth open. I wanted to scream after him, but instead I turned back to the puppy. "You're not a photo," I whispered. "You're not a headline." The note still fluttered above him. I forced myself to read it. "His name is Max. I can't keep him. Please be kind. He loves people." I didn't know it yet, but Max was about to change my life forever. And I had no idea what else this little German Shepherd puppy had already survived. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Have you ever rescued an animal in need? Share your story in the comments below. The rescue van arrived 15 minutes later, but it felt like hours. I stayed sitting in the grass, knees pulled up, watching every little tremble in Max's body. That was his name, Max. It didn't suit someone so small and scared. But maybe that's what made it perfect. His name meant something strong. And in that moment, strength was all he had left. The woman who stepped out of the van, Sarah from the county animal control, knelt beside me without saying much. She didn't ask how I found him. She just looked once at the rope and let out a quiet sigh. "Got something for that?" she said, pulling a small blade from her belt pouch. I braced myself. So did Max. But she worked carefully, slipping the blade between the rope and his body, cutting piece by piece until the tension gave way. He didn't move, didn't run, just sagged into the tree like his legs forgot they could stretch. I reached toward him again, slower this time, my palm open. "It's okay now," I whispered. He didn't flinch. That felt like a win. "He's dehydrated," Sarah said gently, "and probably hungry, but I don't see any wounds." "That's good news." She slipped a soft slip lead around his neck and waited. But Max didn't resist. He stood slowly, like every muscle was waking up from sleep, then took a wobbly step toward me. "You want to ride with him?" Sarah asked. We're taking him to the shelter for intake and a basic exam. I nodded without thinking. I didn't want to leave him. Not after seeing him like that. The ride was quiet. Max rested his head on my lap, eyes half closed, tail still tucked tight. I kept a hand on him the whole time. I wanted him to feel steady, even if I didn't. The shelter was clean but loud. Barking, doors closing, metal against tile. Too much for a dog who'd spent who knows how long tied to a tree. His body pressed against mine the moment we walked in. He'll need a quarantine space, someone called from the back. We don't know his vaccine status. I found him in the park, I said, probably louder than I needed to. There was a note. They took him gently, but every step away from me made my chest tighten. I hated how empty my hands felt. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of him through the door. He was watching me, eyes wide, still full of that quiet plea. Don't leave. I told myself I was just being dramatic, that he'd be okay now. But even as I walked back to my car, I knew I'd be back for him. I wasn't done with Max, and I don't think he was done with me. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, Max tied up and shaking, his eyes locked on mine like he was still asking, why? Why me? I kept replaying the moment I left him behind at the shelter. I told myself he was safe now, fed, warm, monitored. But it didn't feel right. It felt like I'd walked away from something I wasn't supposed to. At around midnight, I got up, made tea I didn't drink, and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the crumpled copy of the note the shelter had let me keep. His name is Max. I can't keep him. Please be kind. He loves people. I kept whispering the words in my head like a prayer or a curse. I didn't know which. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I drove back to the shelter right when they opened. The front desk girl gave me a kind but practiced smile. Back for an update on Max? Yes, I said quickly. I just wanted to check on him. Maybe sit with him if that's allowed. She hesitated, glanced toward the back. I can ask. A few minutes later, they brought me to a quiet room with a glass door. Inside, Max sat curled on a small blanket. He looked better, cleaned up, less tense, but he didn't look happy. The moment he saw me, he stood, not rushed, not frantic, just stood and waited. I stepped into the room and sat down against the far wall. I didn't say anything. I wanted to see if he remembered me. He did. He crossed the room slowly, lay down beside me, and rested his head against my thigh. That was all it took. My heart cracked wide open. I'm Emma, I whispered, running a hand along his back. And I think you and I have unfinished business. I sat there for a long time, stroking his fur, listening to the soft sound of his breath. When I finally got up, I found the manager and asked the question that had been clawing at me since yesterday. What happens now? Can I foster him? She looked up from her clipboard. Legally, we have to hold him for 7 days in case someone claims him. After that, he can be made available for adoption or foster. 7 days. It felt like an eternity. I gave them my number, my email, everything. Please, I said, voice tight. Just let me know if anything changes. As I walked away, I looked back one more time. Max was sitting at the glass, eyes on me, ears low. This wasn't over. Not yet. The next few days crawled. I went to work. I met with clients. I walked through gardens I designed, pretending to care about irrigation lines and soil quality. But my mind kept drifting, always back to that shelter room, to Max's quiet gaze through the glass. Every evening, I'd call the shelter. I knew the answer wouldn't change before the 7 days were up, but I couldn't help myself. Any news on Max? Still waiting. Any inquiries? None so far. Each time I hung up with both relief and dread. Relief that no one had come forward to claim him. Dread that maybe no one ever would. I tried to tell myself I was being ridiculous. I didn't need a dog. My life was calm. Finally, I lived alone. No mess, no noise, no shedding fur. And yet, every time I opened my front door, it felt wrong that no one was there on the other side of it. I hadn't told anyone about Max. Not my coworkers, not my sister. It felt too personal, too fragile, like if I spoke his name out loud, someone might take the story away from me. On the 5th night, I dreamed about him. In the dream, he was still tied to the tree. But this time, I was the one holding the rope. I kept trying to untie it, but every knot I touched became tighter, and Max was just looking at me, silent, waiting. I woke up with tears on my face. The next morning, I didn't even wait for coffee. I grabbed my keys and drove to the shelter. "I just want to see him," I said before they could tell me visiting hours hadn't started yet. They let me into the room again. This time when he saw me, Max wagged his tail just once. Just enough to say, "You came back." I sat down on the floor and he curled up against me like we did this every day. I felt something in me shift. "Settle." "You know," I murmured. "This wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to care this much. But I did. I'd never been a mother. Never even considered it. But sitting there with that small German Shepherd puppy tucked into my side like I was the only thing that made sense in his world, I understood something I hadn't before. Love doesn't ask permission. It just arrives quietly, fully. And sometimes it arrives tied to a tree with a note begging for kindness. On the 7th morning, I got the call. "This is Lisa from the shelter. No one's claimed Max. He's cleared for foster or adoption if you're still interested." I didn't even let her finish. "Yes, I'm coming now." My hands were shaking as I grabbed my coat. I didn't even check my hair in the mirror. Didn't pack a bag for him. I just drove. All the way there, I kept thinking, what if he's changed? What if he doesn't remember me? What if I'm just some woman who keeps showing up? And to him that means nothing. But the moment they brought him out and he saw me, his tail wagged low and slow, like he was trying to believe this was real. "He's still a little shut down," Lisa warned. "Takes him a minute to trust." "I'm not in a hurry," I said, already kneeling. "He can take all the time he needs." They handed me the leash, and that was it. Max stepped beside me like we'd done this before. No pulling, no hesitation, just quiet presence. In the car, he sat on the seat next to me, facing forward like a little passenger. I glanced over once and he was looking at me, not out the window, not at the world passing by, just at me. "You ready?" I whispered. "Because I think I am." At home, I spread out an old blanket on the floor and set down a bowl of water. I hadn't bought supplies yet. It felt superstitious, like if I planned too far ahead, I'd jinx it. Max walked in slowly, nose low, ears back. He sniffed every corner, every chair leg, every shadow. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He just observed. Then after a few minutes, he walked over to where I was sitting on the couch, curled up beside my feet, and let out a long, soft sigh. That was the moment it hit me. He wasn't just inside my home. He was inside my life. I texted my sister for the first time in weeks. I took in a puppy. His name's Max. He was tied to a tree with a note. "You won't believe this little guy." I sent a photo. Him asleep on the rug, head on his paw, ears floppy and uneven. A few minutes later, she replied, "You always were the one who couldn't walk away. I'm glad he found you." I looked back at Max, curled safely in the space between my world and his. For the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel empty, and I wasn't alone. A knock came the next morning. It was Lisa from the shelter standing at my door with a clipboard and an apologetic look on her face. "Emma, I'm so sorry," she said gently. "There's been some confusion." My stomach dropped. She stepped inside, motioning for me to sit. Max stood behind me, his head peeking around my legs, ears up. "I know we said he was clear," she began, "but technically found puppies have a mandatory 7-day holding period before any permanent placement. We're at day 7, but because he wasn't brought in by a county officer, we have to wait until day 8 for release." I just stared at her. "You're telling me I have to bring him back?" She hesitated. "Just for the day. One more night in our care. It's a technicality. If he stays here now and someone files a claim tomorrow, legally we're protected. If he stays here with you and something happens." I didn't hear the rest. My heart was already pounding. Behind me, Max let out the softest whine. "I can't do that to him," I whispered. "Not after everything. He's just starting to feel safe." Lisa nodded. "I know. I hate it too, but the rule is the rule." I looked down at Max. He was sitting now, tail still, eyes locked on mine like he knew something was wrong. "I'll come back for you," I said, crouching. "Tomorrow, I promise." But when I reached for the leash, he backed away slowly, like he remembered what it felt like to be left behind. That's what broke me. "I can stay with him there," I told Lisa suddenly. "The whole day." "Can I?" She blinked. "That's not typical, but I'll make it happen." We drove back together, and when we arrived, they set up a quiet room just for the two of us. I sat on the floor. Max lay against me. We didn't move for hours. I read emails, answered calls, all while keeping one hand resting on his back. At one point, a staff member poked their head in and said, "You know, we've never had anyone do this before." I smiled. He's not just anyone. Night fell. "You ready to stay here one more night?" I asked Max, voice catching. He didn't respond, of course. But when I stood to leave, he pressed his head against my leg just once, then lay back down on the blanket. "Tomorrow," I whispered. "I'm coming for you for good." And this time, I meant forever. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence in my house. It was deafening. No soft breathing from the floor, no quiet shifting of paws, just emptiness. I kept checking the clock. 2:17 a.m. 3:40 a.m. 5:01 a.m. The moment the sun rose, I was up, dressed, keys in hand. I got to the shelter 15 minutes before opening, pacing in the parking lot like a teenager waiting for doors to a concert. When Lisa finally unlocked the door, she just smiled. "He's ready." That's all she said. But those two words felt like air filling my lungs for the first time in days. She led me to the same room. Max was already there, sitting quietly by the door like he'd been waiting too. When he saw me, he stood, and this time, his tail wagged fast and steady. He let out a short, breathy bark, like a question. "Is it really you again? Is it time?" I dropped to my knees and opened my arms. "Come here, baby. You're coming home." He ran to me. Not walked, ran, paws skidding a little on the tile. He crashed into my chest like I was the only thing that had ever made sense. The shelter staff watched quietly from the hallway. One woman wiped her eyes. We signed the last forms, and they handed me a small folder with his intake notes. Vaccination records. Weight, estimated age. 4 months, it said. Still just a baby. I clipped on his new collar, the one I'd bought yesterday and kept on the passenger seat of my car all night. It had a little metal tag that read, "Max, if found, call Emma." We walked out together. No hesitation this time, just purpose. In the car, he curled up on the passenger seat again, but this time he stretched out his back legs, rolled slightly onto his side, completely relaxed, trusting. I turned on the radio, and for a moment, everything felt light. Halfway home, I caught myself smiling. "Can you believe it?" I said to him, laughing softly. "You're mine, and I'm yours." When we got back to the house, I opened the door and let him walk in first. He sniffed once, twice, then turned back to look at me. Not nervous, not unsure, just home. That night, he fell asleep with his head on my foot, and I knew whatever came next, neither of us would ever be alone again. The days that followed felt like the start of something I didn't know I needed. Max settled in like he'd always belonged here. Every corner of my home slowly became his. His spot by the back door where the sun warmed the tile just right. The edge of the couch where he liked to rest his chin while I drank my morning coffee. The little area near the pantry where he'd sit politely when I opened a bag of treats. But it wasn't just the routines. It was the moments between them. The way he started following me room to room, not anxiously, just keeping me in sight. The way he watched me cook, tilting his head at every sound. The way he would lean his whole weight against my legs when I sat on the floor with him, like he was anchoring himself to me. It was quiet, this bond, gentle, but real. One afternoon, I caught him standing in the doorway of my bedroom, staring at the mirror. He barked once, then looked at me like he was confused. I knelt beside him. "That's you," I said, smiling. "That's what a survivor looks like." Later that week, we had our first checkup with a local vet. Max was nervous at first, but the staff was kind. They scanned him again. Still no chip, no records, no sign that anyone was ever looking for him. He really had been left tied to that tree with a note and nothing else. I should have been angry all over again, but I wasn't. Not anymore. Because whoever gave him up, whatever pain, mistake, or fear made them walk away, they had no idea what they left behind. They didn't know this German Shepherd puppy would change someone's life. They didn't know he'd heal a woman who hadn't let anyone close since her mother died. They didn't know that letting go of him was the best thing they ever did for both of us. I took him to the park that weekend, the same park where I found him. We didn't go near the tree. I didn't want to bring back that memory. Not for me. Not for him. Instead, we stayed on the far side, open grass, sunlight, laughter from nearby families. Max chased a ball once, then came running back like he wasn't sure if I'd still be there. I was. I always would be. Back at home, he curled up beside me on the couch, let out that familiar soft sigh, and fell asleep with his head resting on my leg. And for the first time in years, I looked around my quiet little house. And it didn't feel like something was missing. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I was organizing a box of old photos, something I'd avoided for months, maybe years. Ever since Mom passed, I hadn't had the heart to go through her things. But something about having Max around, it softened the edges of that grief. Made the silence feel less like a wound and more like a memory. He lay beside me on the rug, watching as I sorted stacks of dusty envelopes and faded prints. Every so often, he'd nose at a photo or rest his head on my knee like he knew this wasn't easy for me. Then I opened a small envelope marked in my mother's handwriting. Emma, age 10, Bella. I froze. Inside was a picture of me holding our first family dog, a black and tan German Shepherd puppy with the exact same soulful eyes as Max. Bella. She'd been my whole world as a child. My comfort, my shadow, my secret keeper. When we lost her, I was inconsolable for weeks. I'd buried the photo in this envelope and never looked at it again. I must have gone still because Max sat up and leaned closer, nuzzling the photo in my hand. Then he did something I'll never forget. He gently picked up the picture between his teeth, walked across the room, and laid it on the bed. Then he jumped up, curled into the same spot where I used to sleep as a child, and looked at me. I just stood there, one hand to my mouth. It was nothing and everything, like some part of him knew, like he was telling me, I'm not her, but I'm here. And maybe I was always meant to be. I sat down beside him, pulled the blanket over us both, and whispered, I think you were sent to me. We stayed there for hours. That night, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't answer emails or fold laundry. I just lay on the floor beside Max, his soft breathing in my ear, my hand resting gently on his chest. Somewhere between grief and healing, a space had opened, and Max had walked right into it. Not to replace what I lost, but to remind me that love doesn't vanish, it just waits. Sometimes tied to a tree with a note. The storm hit suddenly that night. One of those summer downpours that crashes through the silence like a freight train. Thunder shaking the windows, rain pounding the roof, wind whistling through every crack. Max was asleep at my feet when the first boom rolled across the sky. He shot up, ears flat, tail tucked. His body trembled so hard it felt like the floor shook beneath him. I reached out, but he bolted down the hallway, claws scrambling against the hardwood. Max, I called, already chasing him. I found him in the laundry room, pressed tight into the corner behind the dryer, eyes wide with terror. Not just scared, panic-stricken. I dropped to the floor, trying to squeeze beside him. It's okay, baby, I whispered. It's just a storm. You're safe. But he didn't believe me. Not yet. His chest was heaving, eyes darting like he was waiting for something worse. And that's when I realized this wasn't about thunder. It was a memory. The rope, the cold, the tree, the waiting, the sound of the wind, maybe the rain. Maybe whoever left him had done it in weather like this. He wasn't afraid of storms. He was afraid of being left in one. I crawled in closer and wrapped my arms around him, even as his whole body shook against mine. I'm not leaving you, I said. Not ever, I swear. We sat like that for a long time. The thunder kept rolling, but he started to breathe slower. His head dipped forward, resting on my arm. Eventually, when the rain softened, I coaxed him out. We curled up on the couch with a blanket wrapped around both of us. I turned on a soft light and left the windows open just a little so he could see that the world hadn't ended. That rain didn't mean goodbye. He slept on my chest that night, his breath warm against my neck, one paw draped over my arm like he was holding on. I think he finally understood. This home, this life, it was his now. And no storm, no past, no note on a tree could take that away again. Morning came with sunlight pouring through the windows, warm and golden like it had been waiting just for us. Max was still asleep on my chest, his body heavier now in the way dogs sleep when they feel completely safe. No more trembling. No more darting eyes, just deep, peaceful rest. I didn't want to move. I lay there, one hand on his back, listening to his steady breathing. At some point, I whispered, we made it. He stirred, stretched, and looked up at me with those soft brown eyes, still full of depth, but lighter now, less haunted. That afternoon, I took him back to the park. Not the far side this time, the tree. I wasn't sure I was ready, but I knew we needed to go there together. We walked slowly, his leash loose in my hand. When we reached the spot, I stopped. The rope was long gone. The tape, too. But the tree was the same, scarred, quiet, watching. Max sat down beside me. I crouched next to him and placed a small laminated copy of the note at the base of the trunk. The same note that once made my chest collapse. His name is Max. I can't keep him. Please be kind. He loves people. Only now, I added my own words beneath it. He found a home and he is deeply, deeply loved. I didn't cry. Not this time. Because this wasn't grief. It was closure. Max sniffed the bark once, then looked up at me, tail wagging faintly, as if to say, that chapter's over now. You're right, I said softly, stroking his head. We're done here. We walked back home slower this time, like we were both carrying something lighter than we arrived with. That evening, he curled up on the couch beside me, rested his head on my leg, and let out one of those deep, satisfied sighs he always did when the world finally made sense. And I thought about how strange life is. How a German Shepherd puppy left behind with nothing but a note could end up saving someone who didn't even know she needed saving. Max didn't just survive, he brought me back to life, too. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. Caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility. It's pet care. Max was tied to a tree with nothing but a note. But that wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of ours. He taught me that healing doesn't always come in big, loud moments. Sometimes it's quiet, found in shared silence, gentle eyes, or the way a frightened puppy learns to trust again. Sometimes the ones we rescue us right back. There are thousands of other dogs like Max waiting, hoping, needing someone to stop, to care, to say, you matter. If this story touched your heart, please share it. Every view, every click, every voice helps another puppy like Max find their way home. Have you ever felt a connection with an animal that changed your life? Share your story in the comments below.